Hi, my name is Scott Farquharson, and I am doing my final presentation today for Harvard Extension School's CSCI E-90 Cloud Computing. My topic is corporate file sharing using AWS Storage Gateway. So let's get right into it. What is the AWS Storage Gateway? Well, it's essentially a service that connects your on-premise IoT environment with the storage infrastructure of Amazon Web Services. And you can think of it as a virtual appliance that's in your data center and seamlessly and securely backs up your data. So there's a few different flavors of the gateway that we'll get into in a moment, but essentially you can have access to your latency data that you use on a regular basis and keep on premises, and then store data that is not needed in AWS, or a couple different configuration options on how you want to set that up. The data is also encrypted. It's stored in Amazon's storage services such as S3 or Amazon Glacier, depending on what your budget is, how you want to cost that out, and how you want to use those services. So what are some of the advantages? Well, the biggest advantage is that you can significantly reduce your disaster recovery budget. Disaster recovery is a topic that is incredibly important these days, and all businesses really need to plan for a solution in case that something happens to their main facility, and they need to get their business up and running from essentially a different part of the globe. So what does this do? This service essentially eliminates your need for managing your own physical offsite backup facility. You basically are using the storage services of AWS, and you're not using all of those other computing costs and management costs and all of the other things associated with offsite backup. Is you're really only using storage, and that's how you're able to really significantly reduce costs. And then when you um, at some point need to recover that data, that's when you use computing. And you can use point number 3 here, you can integrate with services like Amazon EC2 to launch instances and attach that data as EBS volumes, which we'll get into. You can also do things like creating incremental backups, which is really nice. And the last bullet point, you can sleep easier at night knowing that your data is backed up securely, because data is encrypted on AWS's end, and you can also securely encrypt the connection with SSL. So it's nice to know that your data is secure, of course. Some notable disadvantages that I've found going through playing with this service is that the nature of offsite storage is that it can eat up your internal bandwidth. You always want to consider that. Um, you still need in-house storage, so this isn't a solution that's replacing your in-house storage needs. You're still going to want to be able to access data in-house through your own facility. You're still paying for costs like the VMware host that you launch, and some of the gateway compatibility stuff that Amazon puts on you is still kind of an issue. There's 3 storage configurations essentially. I won't go into too much detail on them, but essentially you want to think about how you're using the service, and what your data is like. So basically, you can either keep low latency data that you use on a regular basis, on premises, and just back up the other stuff to Amazon S3. You can back up everything to Amazon by using point-in-time snapshots. That's actually the way that we're going to do it for our particular demo. And then the last one is called Gateway Virtual Tape Library, Gateway VTL also it's called. And you can basically create a limitless collection of virtual tapes backed by S3 or Amazon Glacier. And that's a good solution for storage backups that have a need for long retention periods. So there's some different pricing for that one, and I'll show you that in just a second. But let's just look at the gateway architecture. Essentially over here you've got Amazon services. You're using this storage gateway to back up to services like S3. That data can be Amazon EBS snapshots, which can be converted to volumes, which can be launched to EC2 instances. But essentially on premises here, you've got a virtual machine host, and then an AWS storage gateway virtual machine within that VM that you attach storage area. Network devices, basically attaching disks to that. I'll show you how that works, and then you can encrypt that connection to the gateway via an SSL. We won't encrypt, but um, this is the overview of how the service works, available on Amazon's website. Here's the pricing. You definitely want to take a look at this if this is a service you're considering. I won't go into too much detail since pricing can change depending on when you watch this video. But essentially, you've got take advantage of free when you first start using it and playing with it. But after a while, you're going to have to pay for it. And the gateway pricing is currently about $125. You've got a cost for the gateway itself, and then you've got a cost for storage. So the storage costs vary depending on which type of gateway you set up, either the cached volumes or the stored volumes versus the gateway VTL. And you're paying for either volume storage or snapshot storage or virtual tape library. The cost per gigabyte kind of varies there. So you want to look at that. And then you want to consider the cost for data transfer. What does it cost if I actually need to pull that data down back to my facility and kind of actually, essentially use the actual service that you were backing up. And so you're going to have transfer fees of, per gig transfer fees. And, essentially if you've got terabytes and terabytes of data, it's certainly something that you want to understand what your costs are going to be like. Um, let's get into my demo. I propose, we'll actually start playing with this thing. So for this project, I proposed the problem that a company called Crown Point Design is hosting a mission critical website on their server in their facility, and there was a fire that destroyed this server. Oh no. So the company needs a reliable solution to get this website back up and running as soon as possible, and luckily for us, they use the AWS storage gateway. So what we're going to do here in our demo is essentially two different major steps here. We're going to set up a storage gateway, and you'll see all the steps and tedious tasks that are involved in setting up the storage gateway. Once that's done, good, great. Now let's do some really cool stuff and actually see how it would be used in the event of disaster recovery and the steps that we'll do there. Okay, so we are over in the AWS Management Console. So assuming that you've signed up for AWS and you come to the Management Console, what we're talking about today is Storage Gateway. So when you open the Storage Gateway, basically what we can do is deploy a new gateway. You are first presented with the three options, the three different configuration options that I ran through very, very quickly. Today we want to look at one that has gateway stored volumes. So we're basically taking snapshots of our entire data set and pushing them over to Amazon S3. So let's do that because that's a great solution for disaster recovery here. It's going to show some minimum requirements stuff, and we're going to do all this. We're going to choose to launch a VMware ESXi host, and we will have that download for the OTF image that we'll connect to here. So basically you want to now download this, the AWS Storage Gateway virtual machine. This will be used a little bit later, but this is where you want to download that. The next thing you want to do is download VMware Workstation. That's going to help you launch your virtual machine that's going to live on premises. So you're going to need a tool like VMware Workstation that I'm using for Windows here. I basically sign up through VMware's website for an account and download and install that application. You also need the virtual machine itself, which in this case we're using ESXi, and that can be downloaded from the following link. So let's get into Amazon Workstation 10. I have Amazon Workstation 10. It keeps prompting me to upgrade to 11, but this will work. So what we want to do is come in and create a new virtual machine, and we're going to say custom Workstation 10 is great. And then we're going to look for this this zip file of the the ISO file for that ESXi VM that we just downloaded from the website that I just showed you. You can download it as a zip, and you basically just point to the zip, it'll find the ISO, so you don't need to extract it to your desktop because there's a lot of files in that zip. So we can just locate that. You want to give your virtual machine a name. Call this demo 1. And this tripped me up. This is an important step. The processor configuration. You want to make sure that the core processors are a minimum of 2 here, AWS requirement. So we will set that. You can also play with the RAM. This particular machine has about 8 gigs of RAM, and it says that ideally I should be using about 4. If you're running this on a beefier machine, then feel free to play with the RAM configuration for your VM. For the network type, we want to use bridge networking for the IP address to be assigned. We will use the default, the SCSI default, creating a virtual disk. This is another important step, the disk capacity. So you need to have a minimum disk capacity. I forget what it is, but you could create it at like 150 gigs. Essentially, in real world practice, you're going to be creating this at like a terabyte or 20 terabytes or whatever, depending on your um, your on-prem storage needs and how much data that you need to utilize here. But let's make this at least 150 for the sake of this demo. And we will start the launch here. This will take a little while. I'm going to kind of pause and refresh here as the steps go on, so that you don't have to watch this whole thing go, because this takes a few minutes. So I will restart and pause here as we go. Okay, so the VMware or the VM host has basically reached the step where it's ready to install the ESXi installation. So just basically really easy. We're basically going to hit continue almost this whole time. So it's ready to start. We're going to say continue. We're going to say F11 to accept the terms and conditions. In this step, it's asking what drive we want to use. We will say enter. Keyboard layout, we will say the same. We want to set a password here. Important to remember this password, because we're going to connect to it when we set up the AWS virtual machine gateway. Okay, next we confirm the installation. Again, this is just F11, and this will take a little while to install the CSCI, so I will pause again. Alright, this next step says that the installation is complete and it wants to reboot the virtual machine. Let's let it do it. Reboot. Alright, so again, you have to be patient with this. This virtual machine takes several minutes to get installed properly and get set up, so just be patient with it. It's almost ready for us. Alright, this machine is ready, and we know it's ready when it has an IP address assigned to it, which we can see down here. It says download tools to manage this from host, and then it has the IP here. So what we can do is within a browser, we can go to that IP, 192.168.1.33. We can go to that IP address and see if that's running. We didn't use an SSL, but we trust it. So yeah, here's the VMware ESXi welcome page. It means this is up and running, which is great. So what we want to do for this, we want to download the vSphere client. So that was basically step 1. Now we want to connect to this virtual machine and launch the virtual machine for the storage gateway. So we want to download this vSphere client. Fortunately, I've already downloaded that and have it installed. So let's go to that and we can connect to this machine. So this would be the IP address that we're just using, and then you want to use root for the username, and you set up the password when you were setting up the virtual machine. So I said to remember that password. This is what it's used for, and we can log in. Again, this SSL isn't used here, so in practice you'd want to probably encrypt via SSL. And great, so here is the vSphere client. And what we want to do is now use uh, that that OVF template that we downloaded in step one. So again, back on the AWS Storage Gateway console, when we were starting a new gateway here, it gave us this virtual machine download, this OVF template. So you basically download this zip folder. For this one, you do need to extract it so that it lives on your desktop or downloads folder or whatever. You can't just use the zip folder. But you come in here as a new deploy OVF template, and the wizard comes up that allows you to select that. So that may be in your downloads folder or wherever it lives. Um, and you'll go through this wizard, and again, you can rename this one to whatever you want. And you want to leave this as a thick provision as default. That's great. Everything else is good. So let's finish, and we will now let this virtual machine build. Okay, so after a lot more patience here, the next virtual machine has been built and it's ready. You see that the deployment has completed successfully for that OVF template, which is great. We can see it here. Before we start this thing up, power it on, we've got a few settings that we got to come in here and edit. So we'll edit virtual settings. These are pretty well documented on AWS's side, but essentially you want to come into the options, VMware tools, and synchronize guest time with host. Actually, sorry, there's a couple more things you need to do. Come back in here. So we can now add some hard disks. So we're going to set up some hard disks and use them, create them as volumes, which I'll show you here. But we need to add these. So let's come into our hardware, and we're going to add hardware, and we'll add a hard disk. Create a new hard disk. That's great. For size, I mean, you probably in real practice are going to create, terabytes or more, for these sizes. But this is a demo here. Let's just create, I don't know, 4 gig, 4 giggers. Next, finish, and that creates that hard disk. I'm going to create about 4 of those. Okay, so I just added 4 of these hard disks that we'll use. And the last setting here, the SCSI controller, we want to change that to, let me get that in screens, we want to change that to a VMware Paravirtual. Again, this is documented on AWS's side to help you out, but that's that setting. And we'll say, okay, those are what we need to change, and we can now power on this virtual machine. So let's turn it on after all that. Again, all these steps are being done outside of AWS to set up our environment for this storage gateway. Pretty soon we're going to be able to complete this and create this here. Create this gateway, and then we can go in and play with it. So this is when it starts to get really fun here shortly. But right now this is being powered on. Let's give it another moment. Okay, alas, this is powered on. It's saying to log in and giving me the username and password. So we'll just use that, SG user, SG password. And we're logged in. If we come over to the summary tab, hopefully we'll see an IP here. Yes, so we've got a new IP address for this AWS Storage Gateway virtual machine. Okay, so we want to use this IP address for the deployment of the storage gateway over on AWS's side. So that's 192.168.1.34 in this case. So again, now I'm back to the AWS Storage Gateway and I can complete this installation. So let's go through this wizard. It's going to ask us if we did a lot of those steps that we just set up. So we're going to kind of continue here because we just did all of this. And it's going to say, did you create storage disks and allocate disks and all that stuff. Now, here we go. Let's enter that IP. What did I say? 192.168.33 or 34. and we'll say proceed to activation. So right now we are actually activating the storage gateway after all that setup of virtual machines and installing software to our local machine and all that stuff. We get to create this storage gateway. And the power of this is that it's going to connect to our machine and allow us to take snapshots of our full data set, which is really a powerful and great service. It's going to ask you for a time zone. I'm out west, so let's put it in Pacific time, and you can give it a name and say activate storage gateway. Alright, very cool. So we see that the gateway was created called My Gateway Demo. If I click on this, let's see what's going on. We see that the volumes here, there's none. So let's create some volumes. And when I click create volumes, you can see that the disks here that allows these are the those hard disks that I added to the machine. So if I click on this one, it shows me that that's the 4 gig hard disk that I added. So let's create this as a volume, and then we can mount that volume to our local machine and actually map it to a drive and save some data in it. So we're going to say create volume here, and then it's going to ask us for an upload buffer disk, and we'll just use one of the other hard disks. So I'm saying continue to local upload buffer. And it's going to ask me what disk I want to use for the local upload buffer, and I'll just select, like, one of the other ones, this one, and I confirm that that is all good. And so this is actually a really important step in real practice. You can set alarms for this upload buffer's utilization, and if it exceeds or falls within a certain percentage, then you can send yourself an email. Great service to have in real world practice. I'm going to skip it for the sake of this demo, but in real practice, you definitely want to set up alarms for stuff like that. Really, really good service by AWS. Great. It says you successfully configured this storage volume. So this storage volume is now available, and if I go to the iSCSI target info, I can see the host IP here. This thing's good to go. So what we want to do is mount that now to our local machine. So what we're going to use for that is the iSCSI initiator, which I have here, in order to mount this volume to our local machine. So we'll come to the Discovery tab, and we'll go to the Discovery portal, and we'll use that IP. We'll say OK. And if we come back to the targets, we can see it here as inactive. So let's connect to it. And now it's connected, which is great. So it's now mounted, and let's map to it. So what we can do from our command line is type in disk management, and that'll bring up the Windows disk management. Bring that into the view here. Oops, sorry. And so we can see that there's this disk down here that's unallocated, which is our disk. So what we want to do is right click on that and set this up as a new simple volume. Simple little wizard here that we can basically assign it to a letter on our a drive letter. I'll make it the A drive, which is hopefully an omen for this project. And we'll leave some of these defaults alone. And it's basically going to format that disk for us. And so we'll let it do its thing. And if we come into my computer, hold on, it's still formatting. So we'll give it a second. All right, awesome. It's done formatting. And you can see it here under my computer. I've got this new volume A, which is awesome. I might even want to come in and rename that to, storage gateway or something like that. So this is now this is on my local machine, and any data that is backed up in here will be backed up in Amazon S3. So this is the full setup of setting up a storage gateway, which is really cool. But now we want to help Crown Point Design, like I said in our problem, get their website back up and running. So if they were essentially using the storage gateway and had this set up, uh, then what we want to be able to see how we would use it. So um, I've got a Perl script to run that will give us some sample data for kind of a sample website, dummy website that has some files. So I've run that, and it's given me some data in here in this drive. It's basically just some PHP files, JavaScript, some CSS, mocks a little bit of a website here, but essentially it's serving us some data. So we've got some data in this drive now. Let's go back to our storage gateway console in AWS and see what we can do here. A couple really cool things. One is, so this is that volume that it's on. What we can do is we can create some snapshots. So we can create kind of point-in-time snapshots with the type of gateway that we've set up. We can also set up some snapshot schedules. And so this would be really useful because we'd want to, our data is, or our website is, kind of changing all the time. So we'd want to make sure that our backups are taken on a regular basis. So what we could do is set up scheduled snapshots for different increments of time. We could set one up for every 4 hours, and basically save that as a scheduled snapshot. But again, you can also come in and take manual snapshots here. So let's do that. Your snapshot was initiated successfully. Great. So I've taken a snapshot of that data, and that is backed in Amazon as an EBS snapshot. So let's take a look at those snapshots, and what we can do is we could do them right in the console, but we could also use things like the EC2 CLI tools, which I have installed in this machine, to take a look at our snapshots. So I could say EC2-describe snapshots to see what kind of snapshots we have, how many, and what they're called. And we can see, we can see our one snapshot here, which has an ID. So if we want to now convert that snapshot to an EBS volume so that we can use it on an EC2 instance, we would run the following. So we're going to do an EC2 create volume with that snapshot ID, and we're going to throw it in the availability zone of US East 1A. So let's do that. It should now create that snapshot as a volume. And to test to see if that works, we'll go EC2 describe volumes this time. And great, we now see a volume with a volume ID that has the same snapshot ID. So we basically have a volume now, and we could now run an EC2 instance to then utilize that that volume. So let's kick up an EC2 instance. I've got an AMI already in place. In practice here, we would already, this is actually using AWS CLI tools. Basically, we're launching an instance with an AMI ID that I already have. In practice, you probably already have an AMI set to go for your data, depending on whatever your needs are. You'd have whatever software applications you need to have to get this critical website up and running. Example, you'd have MySQL and Apache and any other configuration necessary within your AMI so that you can just kick up the instance, attach your volume, attach your data to that instance, and kind of get things up and running very, very quickly. One of the huge advantages of not only AWS Storage Gateway but all of Amazon services is that they're really set up to really help you get up and going quickly, relatively speaking. So let's uh, let's let's kick this instance up and spin it up and see what happens here. Oh, my security group ID was wrong. Hold on one second. Try this one more time here. Had the wrong security group ID. So we are kicking this up, and yeah, we see the state is pending. So this EC2 instance is being launched. And while that's being launched, let's just go into the EC2 management console, and we'll come to our Elastic Block Store volumes. We can see that there is a volume here. Sorry, I think they're being hidden right now. Yeah, here it is. Scared me there. All right, so we've got one volume here that's created, and what we can do is just really easily attach this volume. Well, our instance is probably not ready yet. Let me check it. Let's see if our instance is ready. We can say EC2, AWS CC2 describe instances of that instance ID, which I typed in wrong. And I will try it again. Hopefully typed in correctly. All right, so the state is now running, which is great. So what we need to do is just come back in here, and we can say the instance is here. Again, that instance we want to have in the same availability zone as our volume. And we'll give that device a description, and we'll say attach. Device is invalid. Okay, so I think I see what's going on here. This instance is actually in a different availability zone, and I think that's why it doesn't like this. This instance is in the availability zone of 1D, and this volume is in 1A. So let's just make this easy, and we'll come in here and we'll create a new volume, and this actually shows you how to do it within the console as well. But we will create this volume in 1D. That was easy. Come back to volumes, and here's our new one that is in 1D, which is perfect. Let's just wait until that becomes available. Okay, so that is now available, which is great. So we've got a new volume, and it's important to remember that when you're attaching volumes to instances, they have to be in the same availability zone. That has tripped me up before, and I'm sure it will trip me up again, but we got it right now. So we'll just come in and say attach volume, and we'll attach it to this running instance. And I'm sorry, so I screwed this up last time as well. So we want to put it in this directory, and we'll say attach, and this should work. Yep, so this volume state is now in use. So that kind of concludes my demo. I'll kind of stop here because I've really highlighted the points. I mean, we've now got a data set that's we've backed up through this storage gateway, and in the case of disaster recovery, uh, we can take this snapshot, convert it to a volume, and attach it to an instance, which we launched very quickly. That instance hopefully would have the software build. If not, we can install Apache, we can install MySQL, any other services we need to get this up and running and basically boot our data from an instance through AWS um, in the event of disaster recovery here. So I think we've really highlighted that. The final steps here is I'd mount that volume by creating a vector directory and then mounting it to the instance, and then I basically have my data. So very cool stuff, very useful tool for its purposes. The AWS storage gateway. Check it out through Amazon. Again, I'm Scott Farquharson, and thank you for your time.